but the information is not tactical, and there's no tools in self-help. Self-help is all about giving people the opportunity to have an aha moment. And when you have the aha moment, it means you've got to go to the next stage and continue to peel the onion layers until we get to the core, which leads to what? Self-mastery, self-empowerment. We own our power. We start to think differently. We start to see things differently. Our reality starts to change. Our friends start to change. Everything changes when we understand knowledge in a way that resonates with us. Because why? It's the truth. And so this is why we need to stop the anxiety and the stress, and we can continue with our lives the way they are, but we've got to make time to read and learn information that empowers us, not that dumbs us down.
That is so true. And the interesting thing, too, about your concept of self-mastery is that it really does create the need for us to just stop and to get silent. And to really learn about ourselves. We've learned about everything else. We've learned about our children, our husband, our employers, our employees in some cases, our parents, our friends, but we haven't taken the time in many instances to learn about ourselves. So what is the first step? What's the first step that someone takes if they want to stop the certain kinds of limiting behaviors and limiting beliefs that keep us from really living a life that is full and definitely the life that we were created to have?
Sure. Well, the first step is that I am passionate about these steps. The first step is that we must, under any circumstances, no matter what information we're presented with, the very first step, no matter what, is to actually understand our body, to really appreciate that this temple is more than just flesh. It plays a significant role in the entire manifestation process. That is the key. Every cell in our body that makes up our body, and let me just remind everyone, 70 to 100 trillion cells make up the body, also every cell has a brain, a heart, an endocrine system, a nervous system, so on and so forth. It is like we have 70 to 100 trillion human bodies that make up the one body, okay? This is critical. When we understand our body, we will then understand why we carry limiting beliefs, because it's not just the mind or the brain that's carrying the limiting belief, it's every cell that makes up your body that's also carrying the limiting belief. So understanding the physiology of who you are is fundamental. It doesn't have to be in depth. It just needs to be an overview. We need to grasp the idea. The second step, Linus, and this is the most important that is left out in every self-help book, we must, and I mean must, we must deal with our emotional state, meaning that many of us are carrying emotions and feelings, namely negative, associated with the past story. I'm going to give you an example. If your parents at the age of 5 were constantly arguing about finances, and you witnessed this as a child day in and day out, you, the first time, experienced your parents arguing about money, created a story around that. Then they argue almost every day, right up until you're 25, 30, 40, and it continues on. That has now become a belief system. Why has it become a belief system? Because what happens is that an individual, a conscious mind, can only deal with one sense at a time. We have 5 senses. It can only deal with one at a time. It's linear. When it is confronted with more than one sense, for example, if the parents are screaming and yelling and they're possibly even, physically, hurting one another, there's a lot of senses going on. That child can't cope with that. So what happens is subconscious mind steps in and says, oh, my God, Mary's in trouble. I need to take over. I'm going to store that experience into the subconscious, and she can tap into it at some point in time. That's considered a trauma. Now, what happens is that every day the child experiences this trauma because the parents are arguing about money, and what happens is that the layers get thicker and thicker and thicker in the subconscious mind. Then Mary gets to 35 years old and she's having serious issues with money, and the subconscious mind will continue to give Mary those experiences until Mary decides to resolve that trauma, which essentially is the limiting belief. So that is why we must deal with emotions and feelings associated to stories, which are essentially our limitations. So when we can see that things aren't going right in our life, we need to address that. What emotion and feeling am I feeling about this? When did I acquire this emotion and feeling? Where was I? Who was I with? And go back to that moment in time where you believe you acquired that story. And this is where I use the methodology of EFT and tapping to actually start moving those energy blocks out of the meridian system, which we can all do at home ourselves. We don't need a physician. You don't need a doctor. You can do it all at home and learn it within the hour, which is what I teach in my books. And the second step, Linus, is changing your beliefs and understanding once you've cleared your emotions. And that's also important, Linus, because when you start clearing your emotions and the feelings associated with emotions, the energy field outside of us, what we call the life force energy, responds to feelings. So if your feelings are negative, you're going to get more of that in your life. When your feelings are positive, you're going to get more of that in your life. So we've got to clear those emotions and feelings priority. The second thing is that once we've done that, then we can start working with the whole notion around law of attraction and around the idea of setting intentions and writing our intentions. And there's a way to do this, Linus, because most people write their affirmations, I am wealthy. Well, guess what? The conscious mind's saying, you are so not wealthy, girlfriend.
Right.
Get out of here, right? You are so not wealthy. And what happens is that message, that last message, gets sent to the subconscious mind that says you are not wealthy. The subconscious mind does not understand language like we understand, which is why I use a lot of coding in my affirmation writing, because the subconscious mind loves to decode. That's what it does. And so we need to learn how to write our affirmations and learn how to set our intentions in a way that bypasses the conscious mind and goes straight to the subconscious mind. And this is done through repetition. And the third thing is then to learn how to surrender through a form of meditation. Now, I don't know about you, Linus, but each time I've tried to meditate in my past, I get bored and I do it for 3 days and then I'm off. I just can't do it. And most people can't because we don't have we haven't learned how to control our minds to stay focused in that place of silence or oneness, whatever you want to call it. Now, what I learned through my research is, why don't I create meditations that are based around intentions? That way, most people that really want something will focus on the intention through a form of meditation. I do a lot of guided meditations. And then that way, you're killing two birds with one stone. One, you're controlling the mind. But two, you're controlling the mind and you're focusing specifically on the intention that you want to create in your reality. Now, these 3 steps, Linus, are critical. They are fundamental. If we just learn these 3 things, our lives would be unbelievable. And all the people that have done my course or even purchased my books have experienced nothing but a feeling of openness. And most people say to me, I feel like my channels have opened. I feel different. You know, I can see things differently. And that is because you've changed the frequency, if you will, of your feelings associated to those stories that have actually been holding you back. So they're the 3 things that I always teach as the fundamental basis of being able to change one's perception and one's reality.
You know, this is really fabulous because I do understand those concepts. And while probably some of my listeners do understand the idea of how emotional baggage impacts you and the importance of learning the coding that your subconscious mind will accept and not basically undercut you, and also the idea of setting your intents and being able to get quiet enough to be able to meditate in such a way that it is constructive for you. But many people will ask, okay, I get all of that, but how do you start it? Because so many of us, and myself included, I've been there before, we just talked about that before we came on the air, feel like they're stuck. You know, it's like they know what they need to do, or they think they know what they need to do. They are hearing this right now. They're saying, that makes sense to me. I understand that, or I that resonates somewhere with me. But how do I start? How do I have that initial step? Because it's almost like, as I told you before, you know, we're on this cliff, and our toes are at the very end of the cliff, and all we need is a feather or maybe someone's nail just pushing our back, and then we fall over into the next thing that we're supposed to be doing with our lives. But it's all about that initial impetus to get us to do that, and many of us get stuck. So in this case, how do you get stuck? How do you get the motivation to be able to get unstuck and to actually implement these processes?
Do you know what, Linda? I think the first thing that all of us should do, and I remember I did this the first time, is get a piece of paper out and write on the top of the list, what is it right now that you desire? The one thing that you have been desiring for so long that you absolutely must have. What is it? Write it on top. The second question is, have you achieved it? And most people will say no, and yet most people have been wanting that desire for years and years and years and years and still are no way near it. That's telling us or immediately that there's something blocking that individual from getting that desire. That's a given. So the next step is to ask oneself, what is it that's stopping me from achieving this desire? And this is how I started, and I think this is a really important way to identify where the block is. The first thing is that there's two ways of looking at it. The first way is, do I have a symptom or an ailment on my body that keeps showing up? If the answer is yes, you need to find out what that symptom and ailment actually means. And Ina Segal has an amazing book on that, or even the Louise Hay one, but I actually do prefer Ina Segal's book. And what you do is you try and identify what emotion is associated with that symptom or ailment and work on that emotion and try and go back in time and understand when you acquired that emotion. It could be, fear, it could be jealousy, it could be, hate, it could be frustration. Whatever it is, try and identify the core and get to that point. And the first step is to actually write the story on paper around that emotion and when one acquired it. Once we've identified that and we're actually clear on, and we have that aha moment when we've actually realized that this story has been holding us back, then we can start to use a tool like EFT to start to clear away that baggage or that story and the emotions very, very quickly. Now, as I said, in my books, I've created scripts so people can follow the scripts, or even just Google EFT, and there's plenty of courses and information on EFT. When I started, I had a practitioner that did EFT on me. I did about 5 or 6 sessions at the beginning because I felt that I needed that. But it's just about starting to write. And I want to say this, Linus, at this point. In mystical teachings, mystics will say that one of the lost teachings in society is actually writing. Now think about it. We've become a computer-age society. Children don't write anymore. They're on computers. So, but when we write, and we write the story out of the story that was holding us back, and then write the story of what we desire in our life, that visualization of what we actually want, that actually does 2 things. One, it resolves the trauma in the subconscious mind, and 2, it sets an intention in the subconscious that basically is saying to your conscious mind, I'm really serious about this intention. I'm serious. And the subconscious will take notice of it. But by writing out the negative as even just a starting point, if anyone that's listening to this, if you don't get anything out of this session, the one thing I suggest is get a pen and paper and write out that story that you experienced at some point in your life that was associated with that negative emotion and the feelings associated with that negative emotions. And in my books, I go through a whole series of questions, and just to prompt to the individual individual to get the story out on paper. And some people don't need it. They can just quite naturally do it. But that actually